While my mother-in-law shopped gleefully with my husband's mistress, I systematically canceled every single one of their credit cards. My mother-in-law still has no idea. She doesn't know that this palace she lives in belongs to me. My revenge has only just begun. The tinkling of a silver spoon against a porcelain plate was the only music filling the grandiose dining room. An enormous crystal chandelier hung above the table, reflecting golden light across the cold, gleaming surface of Italian marble. This was the stage where the drama of her family played out every single night. Valentina Herrera, the unrecognized director and lead actress, stirred her vegetable cream soup without any appetite whatsoever. That particular evening, she had prepared her husband's favorite dish, slow-braised oxtail stew, a culinary process that demanded more than 5 painstaking hours of her attention. But Valentina had done it gladly, hoping desperately to see even a fleeting smile of satisfaction cross his face. However, Mateo Vargas ate in complete silence, his eyes resting far more often on the glowing screen of his mobile phone than on his wife, who sat directly across from him at the expansive table. "This stew is quite good, Valentina," Senora Gloria's voice shattered the oppressive silence. Her tone was arid, yet filled with invisible thorns that pricked at Valentina's composure. "It reminds me of the flavor of a lentil stew from a dingy hole-in-the-wall eatery near our old house. For something made by someone like you, it has a rather authentic taste." A compliment wrapped meticulously in an insult. Valentina had grown painfully accustomed to this pattern. She simply curved her lips slightly upward, forming a pale smile she had practiced religiously for years. "I'm glad it's to your liking, Mama." "Of course Mother likes it. Mother appreciates anything her daughter-in-law does," Mateo interjected, finally lifting his gaze from his phone. He winked at Valentina as if they were a conspiratorial team. But Valentina knew with crushing certainty that this defense was hollow empty. It was simply Mateo's convenient way of ending potentially uncomfortable conversations, not protecting her dignity or pride. "But next time, try a recipe from that French cookbook I bought you," Senora Gloria continued, deliberately setting down her spoon with an elegant gesture. "Our family needs to become accustomed to classy dishes, not this market food." Valentina did not respond. She simply looked at her husband, searching desperately for even minimal support in his eyes. But all she found was his evasive gaze as he busily poured water into his glass with exaggerated concentration. In that precise instant, Valentina felt like the loneliest person in the palace she herself had built. This house, filled with towering columns and imported furniture, felt colder and emptier than the modest rental room in which she had grown up as a child. After dinner, as always, the task of clearing everything away fell entirely to Valentina. The household assistants could only work until the afternoon, a rule established by Senora Gloria supposedly to protect the family's privacy during nighttime hours. In reality, it was another calculated way to underscore Valentina's position as the house's personal servant. As she scrubbed the expensive plates she would never have dared to use in her marriage, Valentina caught sight of her reflection in the dark kitchen window. It was the exhausted face of a woman who possessed everything yet owned absolutely nothing. In the outside world, unknown to her husband and mother-in-law, she was royalty. Valentina was the founder and CEO of Veidis Dynamics, a technology startup currently valued at billions of euros. She had built the company from absolute zero with her own sweat and tears, blood and determination. But in this house, she deliberately concealed her brilliance, allowing Mateo to appear as the successful head of household living off investment returns from his father's inheritance, a lie they had created together to avoid wounding Mateo's fragile ego. All this opulence, the house, the cars, the vacations, even Senora Gloria's unlimited credit card, flowed directly from Valentina's account. They lived comfortably at the expense of her grueling hard work while constantly trampling her pride underfoot. That night, as she rinsed the soap suds from her hands, Valentina asked herself for the very first time, "How long must I continue this farce?" Valentina's doubt did not arrive like a sudden storm. It came as a slow drizzle that soaked through her clothing and chilled her bones to their very core. Everything began with a routine check in her office, a minimalist space equipped with cutting-edge technology that contrasted sharply with the rest of the house, regarded by Mateo and Senora Gloria as Valentina's strange hobby corner. There, behind the thick solid wood door, Valentina shed her role as submissive wife. She became VH. An initial respected throughout the business world. In front of monitors displaying complex data and intricate graphs, she simultaneously supervised the pulse of her company and her personal finances with surgical precision. It was then that she noticed an anomaly that made her blood run cold. The credit card she had given to Senora Gloria, normally used only for monthly shopping at high-end supermarkets or occasional meetings at hotel cafeterias, displayed a strange and disturbing spending pattern. There was an invoice from the luxury boutique Maison Alician for a sum equivalent to the price of a decent car. There were also multiple transactions at La Perla Beauty Institute, an elite beauty salon where a single treatment cost a manager's monthly salary. and what appeared most frequently were dinner bills at Mirador Celestial, a haute cuisine restaurant perched atop a skyscraper that Valentina herself had never visited despite her wealth. At first, Valentina ignored these irregularities. She thought perhaps Senora Gloria wanted to indulge herself occasionally, but the transactions repeated almost weekly and always on the same days that Mateo claimed to have to work late on a new project or meet with an important out-of-town client. The suspicion thickened like fog around her heart. Mateo became increasingly distant with each passing day. His phone was always on silent mode and never left his side even for a moment. He often walked away to take calls in hushed, secretive tones. Sometimes, when he returned home late at night, Valentina detected on his shirt the scent of an unfamiliar woman's perfume, not her mother-in-law's strong, classic fragrance, but a sweet, modern aroma that didn't belong in their home. When Valentina attempted to ask questions, Mateo always had a skillful answer prepared. That must be a client's perfume, darling. The meeting room was very small and cramped. Or, oh, I don't like talking about work at home. It gives me a splitting headache. The breaking point arrived with a phone call from Clara, her best friend since university days. Clara's voice sounded hesitant, uncertain on the other end of the line. Valentina, are you okay? Clara asked carefully. Of course I am, Clara. Why do you ask? Valentina responded, straining to sound cheerful and unburdened. There was a prolonged pause. Valentina could hear Clara taking a deep breath, gathering courage. I don't want to intrude, but I happened to see Mateo at the department store a few days ago. He wasn't alone. Valentina's heart beat slightly faster, her pulse quickening. He was probably with a client, she said, more to convince herself than Clara. It didn't look like a client, Valentina. Clara's voice dropped lower. And I think I also saw Senora Gloria at the same restaurant, at the same table, laughing with them, but I was far away. I'm not completely certain. The call ended in an uncomfortable atmosphere thick with unspoken implications. Valentina said thank you, but her mind was a turbulent whirlpool of dark thoughts. Senora Gloria, laughing with Mateo and an unknown woman, the puzzle pieces began fitting together, forming a terrible image she didn't dare fully imagine. The drizzle of doubt now felt like a heavy storm cloud hovering above her head, ready to unleash a torrential downpour at any moment. 2 days later, the storm arrived through a brief message on her phone. That afternoon, Valentina was in a video conference with her Singapore team, discussing eloquently and confidently the expansion strategy in the Southeast Asian market. On screen, she was a brilliant CEO, sharp and commanding. But when the call ended and silence once again flooded her office, she became the restless, anxious Valentina once more. Her phone vibrated on the desk, displaying a notification from a message sent by Clara. Her heart lurched violently. With slightly trembling hands, she opened the message. It was a short sentence. I'm sorry, Valentina, I think you need to see this. Below the sentence was a photograph that would shatter her world completely. Valentina's world seemed to stop spinning. Her breath caught painfully in her throat. The photo, apparently taken secretly from a table across the way, showed a scene in a boutique cafe. There, seated very intimately, were three people she recognized immediately. Her husband, Mateo, was gazing adoringly at a young woman beside him, undoubtedly the mistress. She leaned flirtatiously against Mateo's shoulder, showing him a new shopping bag from a famous luxury brand with obvious pride. But that wasn't what completely destroyed Valentina's heart. What shattered her soul was the third person in the photograph. Senora Gloria, her mother-in-law, sat across from them wearing a smile so radiant and sincere that she had never once directed toward Valentina in all their years together. And her hand, Senora Gloria's hand, extended tenderly to brush a lock of hair from the mistress's cheek. A maternal gesture, a sign of acceptance, a seal of blessing and approval. Valentina felt a cold that penetrated to her very bones, colder than the marble floor of her house, colder than any winter she had endured. Mateo's betrayal was already painful enough, nearly unbearable. But seeing her mother-in-law, whom she had served faithfully despite being constantly ignored and belittled, conspiring openly with her husband's mistress and even pampering her in that affectionate way, it was like being stabbed simultaneously from the front and from behind. She enlarged the photo with numb, trembling fingers, examining every minute detail. The shopping bag the mistress held was from the Maison Alician boutique. Their table was covered with pretty pastries from the Imperial Bakery. Every strange charge on the credit card now had a face, the satisfied, smug face of the mistress and the happy, complicit face of Senora Gloria. They were feasting with her money, celebrating their betrayal behind her back, laughing at her expense. Crash, the water glass sitting beside her laptop fell to the floor, shattering into countless pieces just like her heart. But Valentina did not cry. The tears seemed to have frozen on her eyelids. There was only a hollow emptiness, and that emptiness slowly began filling with a cold, burning rage unlike anything she had felt before. She looked at her pale face reflected in the dark screen of her phone. The woman in the reflection appeared fragile and defeated, But in her eyes, something had just been born, something hard, sharp, and utterly implacable. This farce had reached its final act. Valentina remained motionless in her chair for almost an entire hour. She sat in silence among the shattered glass pieces, allowing the quietness of the office to absorb all the emotions boiling inside her. The pain, shock, and disappointment slowly settled, replaced by a terrifying calm. It was the calm before the tsunami. She rose deliberately and stepped over the broken glass without flinching. Her steps carried her toward the large window overlooking the perfectly manicured backyard, a garden she had designed and paid to maintain, but had never been able to enjoy in peace. Until now, she had thought her patience was a virtue. She believed that if she submitted and devoted herself completely, someday she would be accepted. She thought that if she concealed her power and success, she could maintain peace in the home and protect her husband's ego. How utterly naive she had been. Her patience had been mistaken for weakness. Her dedication had been considered a mere duty. Her sacrifice had been taken for granted. Mateo and Senora Gloria had taken everything from her time, her energy, her money, and now her dignity. They had let her build this palace only to turn her into a servant within it. Meanwhile, they brought in a stranger and seated her on the throne. "It's over," she whispered to her reflection in the window. Her voice was hoarse but firm, resolute. She returned to her desk with purposeful strides. With a decisive movement, she turned the monitors back on. Stock graphs, financial reports, urgent emails from directors, everything appeared different now. This was no longer just a job. It was her kingdom, her source of power, something she had built with blood and sweat. She would not allow the parasites in her life to trample it. The patient woman who cooked oxtail stew for 5 hours had died that afternoon. What remained was Valentina Herrera, CEO of Veidis Dynamics, a strategist known for being cold and calculating. The long slumber as a submissive wife had ended. The queen had awakened. She lifted her phone and dialed her personal assistant's number. "Miss Torres, good afternoon." "Yes, Senora Herrera, how can I help you?" Torres' professional voice sounded through the receiver. "I need several things immediately." Valentina's voice was crisp and businesslike. "First, prepare a complete report of all my personal assets, including real estate properties, vehicles, and bank accounts. Separate what constitutes marital property and what are assets purely in my name acquired before the marriage." "Understood, Senora Herrera." "Second, contact our legal team. Tell them to prepare a draft divorce petition and property division. Attach as initial data all the assets I requested in the first point." There was a brief pause. Miss Torres was clearly surprised by the request. "Yes, Senora Herrera, I'll process it immediately." "And Torres," Valentina added, her voice as cold as ice, "from now on, inform me in real time of all expenses generated on the additional credit cards in the names of Mateo Vargas and Gloria Fuentes." "Understood, Senora Herrera." After hanging up, Valentina opened a drawer in her desk. She took out a small notebook with a leather cover. On the first page, she wrote with neat, determined calligraphy, "Operation Take Back Everything." A plan began forming in her mind, not a plan of emotional revenge, but a calculated business strategy. The objective was to strip them of all the power and luxury that had made them so arrogant, forcing them to face reality. She would make them feel what it was like to have nothing. The first execution of her plan began the very next morning. Valentina deliberately woke up earlier than usual, put on her finest business suit, and left the house before Mateo and Senora Gloria awakened. She had breakfast in her CEO office on the 50th floor with sweeping views of all of Madrid. The landscape reminded her how vast her world truly was and how small her domestic problems appeared from this height. At exactly 9:00 a.m., she called her private banking manager. "Senor Robles, good morning. This is Valentina Herrera." Senora Herrera, it's an honor to receive your call. How can I assist you today?" "I need you to freeze all additional credit and debit cards linked to my accounts, effective immediately." "All cards?" Senor Robles asked to confirm, "including those in the names of Senor Mateo Vargas and Senora Gloria Fuentes." "Yes, all of them," Valentina said in a business tone that admitted no argument. "As the reason, simply note security concerns. Say we've detected suspicious activity." "Understood, Senora Herrera. Request received. I'll process it immediately. Within 5 minutes, all cards will be inoperative." Valentina hung up, feeling a cold satisfaction wash over her. The first blow had been struck with precision. On the other side of the city, Senora Gloria and her son's mistress, Adriana, were enjoying the height of their arrogance. After a beauty treatment at an expensive salon, they decided to have lunch at a five-star hotel restaurant. Adriana coquettishly pointed to the lobster thermidor and the most expensive champagne on the menu. Senora Gloria, feeling very generous and powerful with a wallet that wasn't hers, simply smiled and nodded approvingly. You deserve the best, dear. Our future daughter-in-law has to look absolutely perfect, she said with a conspiratorial wink. When they finished their meal, including dessert, and the bill arrived, Senora Gloria handed over her black card to the waiter with an air of smug superiority. A few minutes later, the waiter returned with an embarrassed expression. I'm sorry, Senora, the card has been declined. Senora Gloria's face flushed crimson. What do you mean declined? Try it again. The signal must have been poor, she snapped at the waiter. He tried again, the result was identical. It's still not working, Senora. Adriana was beginning to grow impatient. Senora Gloria clicked her tongue in annoyance and pulled another card from her purse, the platinum one, declined as well. Panic began to take hold of her. She tried the debit card, the same result. Murmurs from nearby tables started becoming audible. Senora Gloria's face burned with humiliation. Shame, anger, and confusion mixed into a toxic cocktail. She immediately pulled out her phone and dialed Valentina's number. In her office, Valentina saw her mother-in-law's name flashing on her phone screen. She let it ring a couple of times before answering with a slightly drowsy voice, as if she had just woken up. Hello, Mama. Valentina, what have you done to my cards? Why are they all being rejected? Senora Gloria's shrill voice was so loud that she didn't need to put it on speakerphone. Valentina held the phone away from her ear for a moment. Ah, yes, they're being rejected, Mama, she asked, feigning surprise. Perhaps it's a network failure at the bank, or maybe you entered the PIN incorrectly. Try again later. Don't lie to me, this is your doing, I'm certain. Reactivate them right now, Senora Gloria demanded. I'm sorry, I'm in the middle of a meeting. I cannot be interrupted, Valentina responded calmly, and without waiting for a response, she hung up. She looked at her phone screen and then turned it off completely. On the other end, she could imagine the panic and fury of her mother-in-law. She could imagine Adriana's disgruntled face, her plans for a luxurious day completely ruined. A small, cold smile, the first genuine smile in weeks, formed on Valentina's lips. The game had just begun, and this time she held all the cards. The main door of the imposing house burst open violently, shattering the silence of the night. Senora Gloria stormed in like a whirlwind, her face congested with rage and humiliation. Behind her followed Adriana, wearing a sour expression. The humiliation at the restaurant had been unforgettable. After all the cards were rejected, Adriana had been forced to pay with her own debit card, an unexpected expense that had her complaining throughout the entire taxi ride home. Valentina was waiting for them in the living room. She sat calmly on an individual sofa with a cup of hot jasmine tea in her hand, as if expecting honored guests. The image infuriated Senora Gloria even more. Valentina Herrera, she screamed heroic. E echoed through the high-ceilinged room. How dare you humiliate me in public? Who do you think you are, eh? Valentina took a slow sip of her tea before setting it down on the table. She looked at her mother-in-law with cold, unfamiliar eyes that Senora Gloria had never seen before. I'm only sitting in my house, Mama, Valentina said evenly. You're the one who came in screaming at this hour of the night. Who's the rude one here? Senora Gloria stood gaping. The reply, calm and sharp, left her speechless for a moment. Until now, Valentina would have been the daughter-in-law who bowed her head and apologized for any fault, real or imagined. But the woman before her was different, transformed. Adriana, sensing the unfavorable atmosphere, decided to intervene with a syrupy tone. Senora, calm down. I'm sure Valentina didn't do it on purpose, right, Valentina? Next time, don't forget to pay the credit card bills, okay? The senora was embarrassed. It was a fatal mistake. Valentina's eyes fixed on Adriana, her gaze was as sharp as a scalpel. First, I have never forgotten to pay any bill, she said coldly. Second, I don't recall inviting you to my house. And third, Valentina paused, letting each word sink in. This is a matter between my mother-in-law and me. A stranger has no business interfering. Adriana's face paled instantly. The status of future daughter-in-law she had been so proud of seemed to vanish without a trace under Valentina's withering gaze. She looked toward Mateo, who had just descended the stairs upon hearing the commotion, seeking his defense. Senora Gloria finally recovered her voice. A stranger? She is Mateo's future wife and my future daughter-in-law. The one who will soon be a stranger here is you. You're nothing more than a useless daughter-in-law who can't even manage the household finances. Valentina gave a slight smile, one that didn't reach her eyes. Household finances? Mama, do you really want to talk about that? As far as I know, the people who have never contributed a single cent to this household's finances are the ones who demand and shout the loudest. The barb was aimed with precision at both Senora Gloria and Mateo simultaneously. Mateo, who had remained silent until now, finally felt he should defend his mother and mistress. But before he could open his mouth, Valentina had already stood up. I'm tired, I'm going to rest, she said with finality. She walked past the three people, still paralyzed with shock, and climbed the stairs toward her bedroom. She didn't look back even once. That night, for the first time, Senora Gloria felt that something was wrong, very, very wrong. She was accustomed to living like a queen in this house, where every word of hers was an order to be obeyed. But tonight she felt stripped of her power by the daughter-in-law she had always considered a doormat. The storm she had unleashed was nothing more than a breeze compared to the cold calm of the awakened Valentina. After Valentina disappeared into her bedroom, Senora Gloria unleashed her remaining fury on Mateo. Did you see the wife you chose? She dares to talk back to me? As her husband, you should educate her properly. Go talk to her right now and tell her to reactivate all my cards. She tugged at her son's arm, complaining bitterly. Mateo, his ego wounded by Valentina's icy attitude, felt challenged. He was the man of the house, or at least he had always believed himself to be. With an arrogant stride, he followed Valentina to their bedroom. He found her standing in front of the wardrobe, selecting silk pajamas as if nothing had happened. The sight provoked him further. Valentina, what's with this attitude? He asked loudly. Why are you disrespecting my mother, and why did you block the cards? Valentina turned and looked at her husband with an impassive expression. I'm simply tired of being insulted in my own house, Mateo, and the card situation was just a routine security measure. Security, what nonsense. You deliberately humiliated my mother in front of Adriana. You're jealous, aren't you? Mateo accused, trying to find a reason his superficial understanding could accept. Valentina let out a small laugh, a dry, humorless sound that made Mateo uncomfortable. Jealous? Mateo, I assure you that my current emotions go far beyond something so simple. I don't want to know about it, Mateo snapped, returning to his arrogant mode. Go downstairs right now, apologize to my mother, and reactivate all the cards tomorrow morning. I'm your husband, and this is an order. It was this exact moment that Valentina had been waiting for. She set down the pajamas and approached Mateo, looking directly into his eyes. There was no longer any sweetness or pleading in her gaze, only the look of a CEO evaluating an incompetent subordinate. Mateo Vargas, she called him with a low, dangerous voice. Do you really want to talk to me about financial matters? Do you really want to discuss orders and authority? In this house. Mateo fell silent. There was a clear tone of threat in that question, a level of power he had never heard before in Valentina's voice. Until now, he had no idea where her money came from. He only knew it was always there, flowing into his account each month, enough money for a luxurious lifestyle and to maintain a mistress. He had always assumed it came from investments Valentina managed on the side. Of course I do, he responded, trying to cling to the remnants of his pride, though his voice trembled slightly. Valentina smiled sideways. Good, then explain to me what your source of income has been this month. How much have you contributed to paying the mortgage, the electricity bills, the staff salaries, or even the food you just ate for dinner? Before you give someone an order, make sure you have the right to do so. Mateo's tongue froze. He couldn't respond. He had never truly worked a day in his life. Everything he had was given to him, and in that moment, under his wife's penetrating gaze, he felt like a foolish prince who had just been stripped of his crown. It's late, I need to sleep, Valentina said, turning away and ending the conversation. Mateo could only stand there stunned, his anger mixed with confusion and a profound sense of humiliation. He had come to give his wife a lesson, but instead felt like he had just received one himself. He still didn't fully understand what was happening, but one thing was certain: the Valentina he knew had disappeared, and he didn't like her replacement at all. If the credit card incident was the main earthquake, the following days were a series of aftershocks that slowly demolished the building of their comfort. Valentina no longer needed to say anything, she simply acted in calculated silence. The next morning, Senora Gloria, impeccably dressed, prepared to go to her social gathering. She waited impatiently at the entrance for her personal driver, Senor Garcia, who never arrived. After several unanswered calls, she finally contacted the driving company. The response was brief and professional. We're sorry, Senora. The service contract for your address is being reviewed at the request of our principal client. The service is suspended until further notice. Principal client, Senora Gloria frowned, not understanding. Reluctantly and grumbling, she called a taxi, a deeply humiliating experience for her. Meanwhile, Mateo attempted to transfer money to Adriana, who wouldn't stop complaining and demanding compensation for the restaurant incident. The notification on his phone screen left him frozen, insufficient balance. He checked his account in disbelief. The monthly transfer from Valentina, which should have already arrived on the first of the month, was nowhere to be found. His account was practically empty. Panic seized him. He called Valentina, but the call went straight to voicemail. The chaos in the house intensified. The head of the household staff approached Senora Gloria with a worried expression. Senora, our salaries haven't been deposited yet. They're normally already here by this time, and the pantry inventory is almost depleted. The online grocery delivery service has also been suspended due to non-payment. Senora Gloria, who had never concerned herself with such trivial details, could only snap, "Well, use the cash in the house." "There's no cash left, Senora," the employee responded quietly. Senora Gloria was left speechless. The house, always fresh and cool, now felt stifling. The premium cable television with hundreds of international channels suddenly stopped working. The Wi-Fi speed, previously ultra-fast, was now as slow as a dial-up connection from decades past. The comforts they had taken for granted as a birthright were being cut off one by one without any warning. Valentina was like a ghost in her own house. She left for work before dawn and returned late at night when everyone was asleep. She deliberately avoided confrontation, letting them stew in their own panic, feeling how the money tap that had always flowed abundantly now dripped until it ran completely dry. Their luxury was nothing more than an illusion that could be extinguished as easily as flipping a switch. And now that switch was in her hand. In her rental apartment, Adriana was beginning to grow restless. Her handsome, wealthy prince Mateo now visited her more often with a furrowed brow than with shopping bags. The promises of dinners at the newest restaurants, a trip to Bali, a limited edition watch, everything had evaporated into thin air. "Darling, what's wrong with you lately?" Adriana asked, massaging his temples. They had just finished dinner, not at a luxury restaurant, but takeout food that Mateo had bought on his way over. "There are some problems at home," Mateo muttered. "What kind of problems?" "Nothing important, just that Valentina is being a bit strange," he said, trying to avoid the topic. "Strange how? Strange enough that my monthly allow. NCE still hasn't arrived," Adriana snapped. Her tone was beginning to sharpen like a knife. "And where's your car? Why have you been taking taxis everywhere lately? What will my friends think if I tell them I'm dating a man without a car?" Mateo sighed deeply. "The car is in the shop and there's been an issue with the cards, which is why I haven't been able to make your transfer. Just be patient for a little while." "Patient? I've been patient enough, Mateo," Adriana exploded. "I rejected many other wealthy men for you. You promised you'd marry me and give me a better life than that bland wife of yours. And now what is this? Yesterday I even had to pay the restaurant bill myself." Their relationship, built on the foundations of luxury and lies, was beginning to show its first cracks. Adriana wasn't with Mateo for love, she was with him for the lifestyle he could provide. When that lifestyle was threatened, her loyalty wavered just as quickly. "Listen, this is temporary. Soon everything will return to normal," Mateo tried to reassure her. Adriana pushed him away. "I don't want promises, I want proof. Next week is my birthday. Buy me that bag we saw at Mason Alician. If you buy it for me, I'll believe everything is fine." Adriana didn't say it explicitly, but her threat hung clearly in the air. Mateo sank weakly into the sofa. That bag cost tens of thousands of euros. Even in normal circumstances, it was money he would have had to specifically ask Valentina for. Now, with cobwebs in his account, Adriana's demand felt like a death sentence. He was trapped. On one side was his wife, who had become a cold monster controlling his life. On the other was his mistress, who was starting to show her claws as soon as the money dried up. The foolish prince realized his perfect world was crumbling around him. A week of deprivation was enough to push Senora Gloria and Mateo to their mental breaking point. 7 days of watching their comfortable world disintegrate piece by piece had eroded their arrogance and left them desperate, angry, and utterly confused. They couldn't stand it anymore, not one more day, not one more hour. That evening, as the sun set over Madrid and cast long shadows through the expensive windows of the house, they made a plan. They would ambush Valentina the moment she returned home. They would corner her, intimidate her, and force her to restore everything to the way it had been. After all, she was just a woman, just a wife. Surely she would crumble under their combined pressure. They deliberately waited for Valentina to return home and positioned themselves strategically in the living room like generals preparing for battle. Mateo stood near the entrance, arms crossed over his chest in what he hoped was an imposing stance. Senora Gloria sat regally on the central sofa, her back straight, her face arranged in an expression of wounded dignity and righteous indignation. The lights were turned on brilliantly, every chandelier, every lamp, every spotlight, creating an atmosphere of harsh interrogation. The room felt less like a home and more like a courtroom, with Valentina cast as the accused before she even walked through the door. When they finally heard the key turn in the lock, both of them tensed. The door opened and Valentina entered, looking composed and professional in her business attire. She carried her leather briefcase in one hand and her phone in the other. Her hair was pulled back neatly, and despite the late hour, she showed no signs of fatigue. In fact, she looked more alive, more vibrant than she had in years. She paused for just a moment when she saw them both waiting for her, their faces illuminated dramatically by the excessive lighting. A flicker of something, was it amusement, crossed her features before she composed herself into neutral calm. "We need to talk, Valentina," Mateo said, trying desperately to sound authoritative and commanding, though his voice cracked slightly with nerves. His face showed the accumulated exhaustion and deep frustration of the past week: sleepless nights worrying about money, humiliating conversations with Adriana, the constant anxiety of not knowing what would be cut off next. Valentina walked further into the room with unhurried, measured steps. She set down her briefcase carefully on the side table near the entrance, placed her phone beside it, and then turned to face them both. She didn't sit down, she didn't cower or apologize. She simply stood there, looking at them calmly with those unfamiliar, cold eyes that had replaced the warm, submissive gaze they had known. "Speak then, I'm listening," she said evenly, her voice betraying no emotion whatsoever. The calmness in her tone rattled Senora Gloria more than any anger would have. This wasn't the Valentina who jumped at sharp words or flinched at criticism. This was someone else entirely, someone who stood in her own home as if she owned it, which Senora Gloria thought bitterly without fully underst. Anding the irony, she technically did. "What do you want exactly?" Senora Gloria finally spat out, unable to contain herself any longer. The words exploded from her mouth like venom she'd been holding back for days. "What is this game you're playing? You're torturing us slowly, deliberately, cruelly, cutting off all our comforts, humiliating us in front of others, making us live like beggars, like street people." Her voice rose with each accusation, becoming shrill and desperate. "We can't go anywhere, we have no money, no car, no nothing. The staff is asking questions I can't answer. My friends are calling asking why I missed our luncheon. Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is?" She stood up from the sofa, her hands trembling with rage and something that looked suspiciously like fear. "After all the kindness we've shown you, taking you into our family, accepting you despite your common background, giving you a place in this prestigious household, this is how you repay us, with betrayal, with cruelty." "Kindness?" Valentina repeated the word slowly, as if tasting something bitter on her tongue. She almost laughed, a short, sharp sound that held no humor whatsoever. "What kindness are you referring to exactly, Mama? Please enlighten me. Are you talking about the daily insults about my cooking, my appearance, my background? Or perhaps you mean the constant reminders that I don't belong in your prestigious family?" Valentina took a step closer, her eyes locked on Senora Gloria's face. "Or maybe you're referring to the special kindness of taking my credit card, my money, and using it to wine and dine my husband's mistress? Is that the kindness you speak of, blessing your son's affair, shopping with his whore, treating her like the daughter you wish I was?" The room fell into shocked silence. Senora Gloria's face drained of color, turning as white as the marble floors beneath their feet. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish gasping for air, but no words came out. "Valentina, this is too much," Mateo finally interjected, trying to regain control of the situation. His voice carried a forced strength and artificial authority that sounded hollow even to his own ears. "You're crossing lines here. You're my wife. Your duty, your obligation is to serve your husband and your family, to maintain harmony in the home, not to act on your own like some rebellious child throwing a tantrum." He moved closer to her, trying to use his physical presence to intimidate her. "A wife's role is to support, to submit, to make her husband look good. That's what marriage means. If you can't be a good wife, if you can't fulfill your duties properly, then maybe we should." "We should what, Mateo?" Valentina cut him off sharply, her voice like a blade slicing through his bluster. "Divorce? Is that what you were going to say? Is that your threat?" She stepped forward suddenly, closing the distance between them, and Mateo instinctively took a step back. The movement was slight, but all three of them noticed it. The supposed man of the house retreating from his own wife. "Go ahead," Valentina continued, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper that somehow carried more weight than any shout. "Say it, threaten me with divorce, I'm waiting." The direct confrontation, the explicit naming of the unspoken threat, left both Mateo and Senora Gloria in stunned shock. Their mouths hung open, their carefully prepared speeches forgotten. They had only wanted to threaten her, to dangle the possibility of divorce like a sword over her head, to remind her of her supposedly precarious position, to put her back in her place, make her afraid, make her compliant again. They weren't actually prepared for such a drastic consequence to be spoken aloud, made real. They knew, though they had never admitted it to themselves or each other, that without Valentina they were nothing. The money, the house, the lifestyle they enjoyed, it all came from somewhere, and that somewhere was increasingly looking like it might be the woman standing before them. "We," Mateo stammered, looking to his mother for support. But Senora Gloria was equally lost. For the first time in her life, she realized that she had grossly miscalculated. She had assumed Valentina's patience meant weakness. She had interpreted her silence as acceptance. She had mistaken her sacrifice for stupidity. "That's what I thought," Valentina said quietly, reading their hesitation with perfect clarity. "You want to threaten me, but you're terrified of actually following through. Do you know why? Because deep down in some small part of your minds that still functions rationally, you know the truth. She looked from one to the other, her gaze steady and unwavering. You need me, you've always needed me, and I'm tired, so incredibly tired of pretending otherwise. Valentina walked slowly to the sofa and sat down, crossing her legs elegantly. She looked up at them both, still standing, and Jess toured for them to sit as well. Sit down, both of you. If we're going to have this conversation, we're going to have it properly. Mateo and Senora Gloria exchanged uncertain glances before slowly, reluctantly taking seats across from her. The power dynamic in the room had shifted so completely that neither of them quite knew how to process it. Let me tell you what's going to happen, Valentina began, her voice calm and measured as if she were presenting a business proposal. You have two choices before you, two paths forward. Choose wisely because I will not offer these options again. She leaned forward slightly, her eyes intense. Option 1, we continue as we have been. You continue to insult me, disrespect me, and betray me. In that case, I will continue to cut off every single comfort you enjoy. The cards will stay frozen, the money will stop flowing, the staff will leave, the utilities will be cut, and eventually, very soon actually, you will be forced to leave this house because you cannot afford to maintain it. Senora Gloria gasped, her hand flying to her chest. You can't. I can, Valentina interrupted firmly. And I will, but let me finish. Option 2 is that we stop pretending, we stop lying, we acknowledge the truth of this situation and deal with it honestly like adults. What truth? Mateo asked warily, though his voice suggested he already knew the answer and feared hearing it spoken aloud. Valentina smiled coldly. The truth that I am not the helpless, grateful little wife you've both pretended I am. The truth that this house, this lifestyle, everything you enjoy, it all comes from me, from my work, from my company, from my money. I built this life, I paid for this palace, and you've been living in it as my guests, ungrateful, cruel guests who mistook my kindness for weakness. The silence that followed was deafening. It pressed down on all of them like a physical weight. Senora Gloria looked as if she might faint. Her carefully constructed worldview was crumbling around her. All those years of acting superior, of treating Valentina like a servant, of playing the grand lady of the manor, and she had been living off the charity of the woman she despised. Mateo stared at his wife as if seeing her for the first time. His mind raced, trying to reconcile this powerful, confident woman with the quiet, subservient wife he thought he knew. Pieces of a puzzle he hadn't known existed began falling into place: her home office, the late-night work calls, her expensive laptop and equipment, the mysterious source of their endless funds. You're lying, Senora Gloria whispered, but her voice carried no conviction. Mateo is the provider, his father's inheritance. Was exhausted years ago, Valentina said bluntly. The investments failed, the trust fund dried up. There's been no inheritance money for nearly 6 years, Mama. Everything, absolutely everything, has come from me. She pulled out her phone and scrolled through something, then held it out toward them. Would you like to see the bank statements, the property deeds, the corporate financial records? I have them all right here. I can show you exactly how much money has flowed from my accounts into yours every single month for the past 8 years. Neither of them reached for the phone. They didn't need to see the evidence. The truth was written all over Valentina's face, in her confidence, in her complete lack of fear. So here we are, Valentina continued, pocketing her phone again. At the moment of truth. You can accept reality, show some gratitude and respect, and we can try to rebuild something honest. Or you can continue in your delusion, and I will systematically dismantle every aspect of the life you've taken for granted. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. I don't need your answer tonight. Think about it, reflect on your choices. But understand this, I am done being invisible in my own life. I am done being insulted and betrayed. That Valentina is dead. She picked up her briefcase and phone and began walking toward the stairs. Then she paused and looked back at them one final time. Oh, and one more thing, she said almost casually. I have proof of everything. The affair, the spending, all of it. So if you're thinking about trying to divorce me and claim I've been a bad wife, I'd reconsider. The courts tend to be very sympathetic to wealthy women whose husbands cheat on them with their mother's blessing. With that, she climbed the stairs, leaving Mateo and Senora Gloria sitting in the brilliantly lit living room, surrounded by luxury they now understood was never truly theirs, facing a future that had suddenly become terrifyingly uncertain.